I'm honored to always introduce the lovely and enchanting Alison Cayne, who is a Naturally New York board member supporter. Let's get started, shall we?
Yeah, I'm a little off my game because I'm used to Jake introducing me and taking the Naturally New York thing, and also, as everyone on the panel knows, I just got something in my eye before we went live, like 2 minutes. So I'm like a little funny, but I'm super excited to be here. Like Adrian said, I'm the founder of Haven's Kitchen. I also have a podcast called In the Sauce, where I am now on my 223rd episode of interviewing people, not like how I built this, but like how the hell am I going to build this? And it was hard in 2018. It is a lot harder now. And that's why Naturally New York is a really nice community to have for those of us in the natural, food and beauty industries. So I'm going to read a little. Naturally New York started in Boulder and is now a community of 9 regional chapters that spans the full spectrum of the natural and organic products industry, including food, beverage, beauty, supplements, and more. Our New York chapter has an active membership base of over 800 CPG professionals. We host virtual and IRL events. I should say Adrian hosts because she does it all, including our pitch slam, like Adrian mentioned, competition at the Summer Fancy Food Show, and a bunch of other sort of really fun networking events. Key initiatives for 2024 include a founder series, investor boot camps, retailer and distributor pitch days, and a showcase day. Jake and I started the Retailer Roundtable series together. This is now our 4th one. And I think it was Jake's idea that rather than having buyers, as we usually did in the past, for this panel, have some fellow founders and talk a little bit brass tacks, not just about what looks good in a pitch, what's a nice selling story, but how do we build our teams? What's the deal with brokers? What should we be doing in early stages to prepare for growth? There's less money in the ecosystem. A lot of us have less funding. So we don't have necessarily the money to spend on growth or to just throw toward a bunch of end caps. So how do we not spend too much, but also get the distribution? And how do we even measure what we're talking about? So without further ado, I would like to start by asking each of our panelists to introduce yourself. I find you do it better than I will. And then we're going to get into the nitty gritty. Just as a note, I'm not able to look at my questions, look at the panelists, and look at the chat. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in. Adrian will kind of let me know if we have time at the end. But I do have a lot of questions. So if we don't get to your questions, just DM me aggressively on LinkedIn and we'll get to it. Okay. Now, Michelle, tell us about you.
Thanks so much, Allie and Naturally New York for hosting us today. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Jimenez Majato. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Pizza Cupcake. The Pizza Cupcake is a gourmet handheld pizza snack made with premium Italian ingredients. We use real mozzarella, Italian tomatoes, and it's all filled inside our delicious trade secret dough recipe, which is a hybrid of a brioche sourdough. And it really all started when my husband asked me out on a pizza date here in New York City. And here we are today, 5 years later. And I would like to say the company is an expression of our core values of sharing joy, innovation, and really using wholesome quality ingredients that we know and feel good about.
Awesome. Kevin.
My God, that was a good intro, Michelle.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I'm Kevin, one of the co-founders of immi. We make a healthy instant ramen that makes you feel good. So we invented the world's first low carb, high protein, and fully plant-based instant ramen. It's definitely not like your college instant ramen. And I will end there. Yeah, we started this about 3 years ago, and this will be our 4th year in market. Just excited to be here.
They know that I'm about to toot all of their horns, so they don't have to toot their own. Okay, Jake.
Thanks, Allie. And to be clear, I had the idea of doing founders for the Retail Roundtable. I did not volunteer myself. That was just a little self-important to be like, we should have founders do it, and then nominate myself. That's not how it happened. But nice to be here on this side of the panel this time. As Ali mentioned, I'm Jake. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sweet Nothings. We have a variety of products, both frozen and ambient, and I'll get into some of our strategy around those two temperature states. Everything we do is organic, no added sugar, super simple, clean, whole ingredients. We have things like our squeezable smoothies, which is a kid's Go-Gurt type product made from just blended fruits and veggies that lives in the frozen fruit set, all the way to our nut butter bites, which are peanut butter filled date bites that live with nutritional bars. So excited to get more into it, and yeah, honored to be a panelist today. Thanks.
Amazing. Well, thank you all for being here. First of all, I know it's not always the most comfortable thing being on a panel. Secondly, I know you're all very busy. And third, I think you're all, I don't know, some of my favorite founders. And part of that is because you're humble people and none of you have ever said you know the secret. And none of you are up here telling people this is how you should do it. And here's all my advice for LFG rocket ship situations. But you're all incredibly successful and really good humans. So I'm thrilled to be hosting you. So Michelle, speaking of rocket ships and LFGs, you've expanded your distribution like gangbusters over the last couple of years. I think you were regional with Whole Foods in 2021. Now you're in over 7,500 stores, including Walmart, Kroger, 4 divisions of Albertsons. I could ask you a bunch of questions and I will, but I guess my big question for you is, you've had a lot of success getting into these accounts. What would you say is the thing that gets their eyes to light up? Like, what is the selling story that's been the most compelling to these buyers? Is it you? Is it the product? Is it the data? Is it what you'll do from a marketing perspective? Like, what would you say has been like your secret cupcake pizza sauce?
In addition to our dough. Well, thank you so much, Ali. So sweet. Well, I'd like to say when we first started, and retail expansion for us is really new. We got a lot of that distribution in Q3, Q4 of 2023. So there's still a lot of learnings that we're going through right now. But I would say in the beginning, when we were presenting our product to buyers, it was really about 3 different things. I would say number 1 is your story. I think buyers want to understand and know why you started and how you started your company and the people behind it. We're a husband-wife team. It's not until this year that we're actually building our team and doubling our team. For the first few years, it was 3 of us. And I think, buyers want to know that. And I think that's really important to understand like your why and your mission. Number 2 would be like our differentiation, which I think has really helped us. We're merchandising frozen appetizers, and it's actually an anomaly because we can also be merchandising frozen pizza. But for us, we felt like because it's a handheld snack, it's better to be in frozen appetizers. So I think understanding where you want to be in the merchandising and which set you want to be a part of is really important. So then you know which buyer you want to pitch to and who you want to reach out to. And then also understanding what your differentiation is, like what sets your product apart from other brands in the category. And that's not to say that you're better than any other brand. It's just what makes you different. And why would that buyer want to give you shelf space, especially as an emerging brand, because you don't have the same amount of funding as one of those, legacy brands do. And that's really, I feel like the opportunity for us emerging brands is to take shelf space because we are offering something a little bit different in the sense of we care about quality, we care about the innovation, and also it's something fun and exciting that you're bringing to the category. And so number 3 would be, how do you plan to drive sales and grow the category? So it's important that, yes, you want to focus on your brand, but what is the incremental value that you're bringing to the overall category and how you can help that buyer, in addition to the differentiation that you're bringing to that category. So I would say those are really the 3 things that we focus on, and also leaning into our product as well. Of course, you want to have a delicious tasting product. I think that's number 1. I think that's understood, but you want to have a good tasting product. Once buyers like that, then it's all about your story. How are you going to launch to market? And what are you going to do to support that retailer?
Yeah, I mean, that was really well put. It's that incrementality piece is something that I think buyers are caring more and more about because they're less, they're more risk averse. So they're not going to swap in something that they don't know is going to perform better or lift the overall category at this point, I would imagine. Kevin, immi also had a stellar few years. You grew to 2,000 retail doors. You launched 3 new flavors. There's another product announcement on the way, teaser. You had a music video. We can't. uh, Usher, Naomi Osaka, Apollo. You have a lot of celebrities as supporters. So you're clearly exciting people. What do you think those sort of light up eyes are coming from? What would you say is your secret sauce at this point?
Yeah, I think it's definitely so. The first thing is the instant ramen market is a pretty large category. It's $52 billion globally, and what's interesting about the space is we brought a lot of newness to that category, just because there hadn't really existed concept of low carb, high protein, and plant-based all in one. And I think when you combine that newness with this nostalgic, familiar category, that's a great recipe for just a lot of like inherent demand. And so I think that was exciting for a lot of the folks who wanted to support, and especially for buyers where it's not a hard pitch for us to go to them and say, hey, take a look at your instant ramen aisle. When have you seen innovation in the past 50 to 60 years? And most of them are like, well, it's still filled with those cup noodles, the styrofoam ones, and there's hasn't been anything. So when we are able to bring that innovation to the table, and then as Michelle called out, from an incrementality standpoint, our buyers, they look different. I'd say they definitely are willing to pay a more premium price point. I think that's exciting for a lot of these groceries, especially conventional, who want to bring those types of buyers to their aisles and obviously drive like a bigger basket size. So we do that for them as well. And I think it was probably that plus the fact that we had around 2 years of strong direct to consumer data just across all the 50 states, and that's helped quite a bit too.
Yeah. So for both of you, before we move on to Jake, it's been rapid. So it hasn't necessarily been like slow and steady growth. Like Michelle said, it's been fast. That can come with some bumps, that can come with some scaling, challenges. It's always like the better challenge to have, but it's still a challenge. I guess just either of you very quickly, like, have there been bumps? What would have helped with those bumps had you known to better prepare for scaling kind of as quickly as you did? Michelle, let's just start with you.
Yeah, I think for us, we were really thoughtful in how we approached it. So we launched a market, well, retail in October of 2021, and we started in our backyard. We're based in Brooklyn. So we wanted to start with like Wegmans, Whole Foods, retailers that we knew our customers were shopping at. And so from there, then we kind of then approached other retailers. I would say Expo West was really how it all happened for us. And it all happened so quickly. It was our first trade show. Prior to that, we really launched this during COVID and sending samples to buyers and really meeting on Zoom. So I think Expo was a huge opportunity for us to get in front of the right decision makers. Also, RangeMe was a really great platform. That's where the Albertsons buyer found us in 2021. We built that relationship over time. And I think, we had a lot of interest from other retailers, and it was us really understanding what we could afford and really how much bandwidth we had to really execute. So with one retailer, they offered us national distribution and we pushed back. And then also actually that happened with 2 retailers. It was, really understanding like the investment that needs to be made with some of these larger retailers. Can you afford it? And then what is the promotional support and that trade spend investment going to be? So I think, we're still going through this, but we've been really thoughtful on which retailers we've launched with, knowing that we have the consumer base that's shopping there based off, we launched D2C first as well. And so we have a lot of information on who our customer is. And then I also think, which retailers we can afford to promote with, which makes it really challenging. And then also with Whole Foods, we're part of their LEAP program, which is incredible. It's an accelerator program that they did. So having that support and that one-on-one mentorship has really helped us with our expansion with Whole Foods.
Amazing. Kevin, anything that you wish you had known before you hit the pedal to the metal?
Well, I think for us, we're actually probably like a baby in the retail space compared to most of this panel. We started so again, the first 2 years were D2C. We have a lighter product to ship. You know, it's a packet of noodles with some seasoning. So it's a lot more feasible for us to be able to scale online and make sure that we were contribution margin profitable. And we figured, hey, if we could scale profitably online, we might as well continue growing that brand as long as possible until we start to see like a ceiling of growth. And then once we launch in retail, we can funnel all that traffic. I think everyone here knows that story. So for us, I will say like a big regret actually was not entering retail earlier. I think now we are starting to see that, you know, a lot of our peers, you know, they at least started pitching a year earlier. And I think it just compounds in retail, as everyone here knows. Like when you get into the right account, it opens doors for the another conventional account, so on and so forth. And so we're still playing catch up in that regard. But I'm also grateful that it was like a chicken and egg. I think we're grateful we did wait to where we were. For example, when we launched with Whole Foods, we were trying to go deep before going wide, and we were told this by a lot of our friends and retail consultants. So we launched with 5 Whole Foods regions, and as soon as we launched with the 5 Whole Foods regions, we went to even like we have this private Facebook community around like 8,000 immi evangelists, and we said, hey, we're in Whole Foods, FYI, go check us out. And our community just went into all the stores and bought out all the shelves, literally buying out the retail packaging, like the inner display cases. And it really showed the buyer like, oh my God, there's a community behind this brand. And that's why they were willing to kind of expand us nationally, you know, in less than a year. And so there was benefits to not going early, but I don't know, hindsight 2020. Think about it all the time.
No, I mean, well done, sir. Jake, you're my alt channel guy. That's how I think of you. Every time I go to Juice Press, I get the nut butter bites. I mean, you have partnerships, you're working with other retailers, you're working with other brands. I feel like whenever I call you crying, you always are like, what about this? Like you always have sort of like an outside of the box. It doesn't all have to be Fresh Market, Wegmans, then Whole Foods, then Kroger, then Target, then Costco, then Walmart. It doesn't have to be that. And there are lots of different ways to make this all work. I guess my question for you is, I can't ask to see inside your brain, but I guess, how do you engage other brands and retailers in these collaborations? I know that there are other partnerships coming up that I won't give away, but how do you make those things happen? Because I think that people running these companies, like we get nervous. And if we miss a reset or if we get a no, then we're like, oh, it's another 18 months before I can even crack that code, you know, but there's a lot that can happen in between then. And so I guess I'm asking you to encourage everybody.
Yeah, thank you for all that. And yeah, I'll briefly touch on the why and then go into the how. But the why is, I think you nailed it, where, you know, we've been at this now over 4 years and are fortunate that now we've been able to make inroads and have a lot of momentum across channels when you think of traditional brick and mortar, like natural and conventional and mass and club and all those. But it took us a while and we got a lot of no's for many years before we started building the momentum and getting the yes. There's obviously, you know, some companies who hit a trend perfectly and nail flavors and pricing and all that perfectly and pretty early in their retail life accelerate. For us, it took a few years of figuring out the right product mix, the right promo mix, where to be on shelf. Going back to that incremental piece. Yeah, we learned that our products living in frozen fruit do a lot better than the smoothie products living in novelties because of the type of customer who's looking for different products in each of those aisles. So to a point both Michelle and Kevin made, we realized that because our products were more from an occasion standpoint, being treated like smoothies as mid-morning snacks or 3 p.m. pick-me-ups, we should be next to the bagged frozen fruit that people are buying to make smoothies at home and really push that same incrementality story of, you know, the mom or dad going to buy fruit for the family smoothie on a Saturday loves the idea of also being able to purchase a ready-to-eat version with the same ingredients they would use anyway, that's convenient and they can pull right out of their freezer. But that took us Yeah.
I want to just, sorry, interrupt you for 1 second, because I remember your interview on the podcast because you got that intel from Social Nature. And Social Nature is something that I get a lot of calls about, and everyone thinks is super expensive because they think of it as just a sampling program. But those insights turned out to be really valuable for you, and it changed everything in terms of your velocity and the trajectory of the business. So it is something that I'd like to get back to, but it's just something for everyone listening to think about insights, and that maybe you might want them even early on because of that placement issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you nailed it. Social Nature is very expensive if you think of it as sampling, and it's very affordable if you think of it of consumer insights. You can do a lot with those pre-trial and post-trial surveys that I haven't found a better solution for cheaper. The only one would be if you've built a community the way Kevin has, and you have direct access to so many customers, but that's really hard to do too.
Yeah.
So going back to the why, it was sort of like, okay, in these early years, we're not building retail as quickly as we would like to build retail, but we want to keep growing the business. We know that there's economies of scale from a COGS and margin standpoint as we continue to grow from a volume perspective, and there's more learnings. So to Ali's, question and teed me up for this, we started being more creative on the alt channel side of things. And I highly encourage it because, one, there aren't, for basically all of them, there aren't set calendars and set schedules of, you present in January to find out in June to maybe be on shelf in October. You'll find out more quickly, and you have more shots on goal because a lot of these folks are looking at products somewhat frequently. And two, there's just such a huge universe, right? There's smoothie shops and coffee shops and fast casual restaurants that sell snack bars. There's online meal delivery services like Hungry Root or HelloFresh, or Blue Apron. There's Butcher Box,
REI.
Smoothie Box. There's REI. There's just so many places that sell food, right? To put it really simply. And so what we started asking our customers when we do a demo or when we, be giving out samples somewhere, we'd say, where do you buy food today that you'd want to see this product outside of grocery stores? And that's where we got a lot of ideas, right? Enough New Yorkers said, I would love to see us at Juice Press, that we were able to eventually convince Juice Press to bring in all flavors of our nut butter bites. And now at all, 90 throughout the Northeast, you can, along with your smoothie, buy a pack of nut butter bites. But that came from consumers and constantly asking them, where would you want to find this? Oh, I would love it in my Hungry Root box. Great. Of course, we're already familiar with Hungry Root, but there have been opportunities where we're less familiar with the meal delivery service platform or the online e-commerce group or whatever it is, and hear from a few customers and are able to go and do that. So that's sort of the why. It's an amazing way between these frustrating resets that can take you several years of pounding on the door before you get your opportunity to keep growing revenue, keep learning, and keep growing your brand.
Yeah, I mean, it's great.
And then quickly on the how side of things, I think, a lot of it has been just, being super direct with what our capabilities and our ideas are. And maybe that works, 10% of the time, but the 10% of the time it works, it feels really good and makes you keep going. So I think we've done this both on the alt channel side and with our retail partners. And you'll see it with some innovation we're launching with a few different partners in 2024, but saying to them, hey, just so you know, if this were something that's interesting to you, here's a mock-up and here's how we'd approach it, and we could build this together. And we've been able to do that, with other brands, as Ali's mentioned, with retailers, with these alt channels. Of course, it depends on how you make your product, what your MOQs are, what your team size looks like. It's not like you can promise everyone in the world, but for your top customers who you want to build relationships with, I'd highly encourage just be an open book. And even if it's, the last slide of your deck saying, hey, along with the core products that we're talking about today, just as an FYI, here are some of our other capabilities. Let us know if it's ever of interest. And we've had, buyers on the spot say, oh, I've been looking for that. Or we've had buyers circle back 6 months later and be like, hey, I remember you mentioned you could maybe do X, Y, Z for us. What would the process be? And a few of those conversations have led to those innovation launches that are happening this year. So
Yeah.
really encourage you to just like, shoot your shot. Is
I like the
Or
shots on goal and the shoot your shot, but I do
super
think that,
towards everything.
whether it's a retailer, an investor, a consumer, I mean, pretty much anyone, a partner, like making it easy for them to say yes to something, giving them a visual of something that might be fun for them or exciting for them so that they don't have to do any thinking. Smoothing the path for everyone around us seems to be like the necessity for founders these days. We're in a very hard world, and we have a lot of people that are engaged in the business, and whether it's someone who's helping us make it or someone who's selling it, getting them to a place where it's as easy for them as possible seems to be sort of like our job. So I saw something on LinkedIn today. I think Cameron from WeStock posted it. It was something along the lines of salespeople aren't creators, they're converters. Brokers are not creators, they're converters. People that you're hiring in your sales organization aren't necessarily going to be able to magically get you all of these doors and all of these relationships and into all these stores. And so I do think that there's like a bit of, especially early stage, on the founders to kind of create the magic. And so in terms of the team building, it's also an expensive function. And so, Kevin, I know you're super tactical about all of this, and I'm just curious about the evolution of your sales team. What does it look like now? How do you think about all these different, as Eric Skay calls it, bites of the apple? How it's a big shock of going from contribution positive margin e-com to retail with all the different players and people and numbers and deductions and everything. So how did you build a team?
Yeah, well, first, I love that analogy of like the converters and the creators. I actually haven't heard that before, but that makes total sense. We so when we first build out any function, we actually first try to always work with either like a freelancer or like a consultant, just to ensure that there's like that channel has a prospect of becoming a real thing before we staff with a full-time member, just because I think we're all trying to save money. So for us, we worked with a retail consultant for about 6 months, who was a VP of sales at another pretty large brand, who could see those 10 steps ahead of us, and he really helped to outline our initial retail strategy, helped us figure out like which brokers to sign with, and then it was really just on me and the rest of the team to execute against that for the first, call it like 6 to 8 months. There was a certain point where I think after we had gone to, I want to say like 500 to 800 doors, where it was becoming unsustainable for me to try to run, both like the sales and the growth side as well as the wholesale. So we ended up bringing on our director of sales. And why I was referring to your analogy is because something we recognized internally was, I think I, as a founder, can make a huge dent in bringing in these quote unquote leads, and like being there in every pitch, helping to help close. But I had no knowledge whatsoever of, okay, what do you do after you get into these accounts? Like, how do you set the promo calendars, all that trade spend, the math behind it, what strategy looks like of like, if Walmart comes, do you say yes or just like push them away? So when we were hiring for a director of sales, we wanted someone who had that like 2 steps ahead experience, who was already, knew how to deal with these like large conventional accounts, and maybe had even worked at larger companies, but maybe didn't have like the startup hustle that like hit the ground, the pavement that I think like I already have that skill set, because we had to have that skill set building the company. And so it was almost like finding a co-founder again, where we had to have complementary skill sets. And I think that's how we built it. And really the team now is just myself, our director of sales, and the retail consultant will do 1 to 2 calls per month, just to, again, help us ensure we're not missing any blind spots. But the two of us have been able to pair pretty well up until this point, the 2,000 doors. And I think if we do end up landing a conventional account like a Target, Kroger, or Publix this coming year, we'll probably start talking about maybe bringing on like another director of natural, or someone to take off the natural accounts under that director of sales.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. I always think of like Peanuts with Lucy and the Marcy, the girl, or no, it's Peppermint Patty, and she's always like, take this down to like Marcy, because I feel like I can do a lot of the like talking and key accounts, but I have no follow up. Broker speak makes me honestly like feel rage. So I definitely need people on the team who know how to make a promo calendar, and all that. But it's just it gets expensive. And I think your approach to hiring someone just sort of to get the lay of the land, even to know what the job is. Sometimes as founders, we're hiring for roles and we don't even know exactly what the job description is, you know? Michelle, so back to you, Walmart. So it's a big topic these days. I actually had an episode with a broker, and by the time I got off the episode, I was like, Walmart! Like I had totally drunk the Kool-Aid. Margin seems to be pretty good. They seem to be better at playing with emerging brands than they used to. They're certainly very eager to do launches with, the celebrity-backed brands. And they, I think, like having innovation there. They have incredible data. They know their consumer. They know where you'll work. And I hear they're tough, and I hear you've got to be super buttoned up. And I'm curious if it's still sort of like Sprouts doesn't like it so much when you're at Walmart kind of thing, if that's just kind of an anachronism or if that's real. Have you found those positive things to be true, and have you found some of the more challenging things to be true, and are other retailers grumpy? What can you tell us about Walmart?
Well, it's so interesting because, our journey has been very different. I think for every brand, it's going to be different. And so we were always told you're supposed to launch in natural first, and then from natural go to conventional, and then you go into mass merch. And we didn't follow that at all. So we did launch with Whole Foods and Wegmans first, but then we got an opportunity with Walmart. And, they've been a really great partner to us. I have to say, launching with someone like a Walmart, and that was our strategy early on, was mostly EDLP. So everyday low price, right? So with Wegmans, everyday low price, you put everything into your costing and you give them the best price possible. And so this whole thing about trade spend and understanding how much to invest with every retailer, and also the free fills, the slotting, it's very expensive. In our category, slotting is expensive. And so Walmart does not charge slotting, and you don't have to run promotions with them. And they give you a lot of volume, and they actually set us up for success we had to have our EDI set up. We had to be buttoned up early on. And again, we were a team of 3. So we were able to figure it out, and we really leaned into our broker. I think having the right broker as your partner is really key to success with a retailer like Walmart. And so we leaned on our broker a lot to really tell us how to do business with Walmart and who to work with. And like we work with Dot Foods, that's our redistribution partner. And we had a partnership with Dot Foods prior on the e-com side. So they're a fulfillment partner for online, for D2C. And it was great because it's a consignment model with Dot Foods. So you own the inventory. It's not like a distributor. And the more volume you do with Dot Foods, the better the pricing is, because they charge you per pound on the case for each shipment. So I think for us, it was really great. And then from there, as a small emerging brand, we don't subscribe to Spins or Nielsen's. Like, we don't have access to data, but Walmart gives you that information. Well, with our broker, we had access to all that data. And then from there, we're able to see and create a more of a compelling story that we're able to use during our category reviews with other retailers to show what the velocities were like. And yeah, I mean, there are some retailers that don't want to partner with us because we're in Walmart. And to be honest, we couldn't really afford to work with those retailers anyway, so it's okay. And we have some innovation that we're working on that I think would be interesting to maybe those retailers. But, I think we did launch in Whole Foods nationwide, and we were part of their elite program, and we were in Walmart. So I wouldn't say that just because you're in Walmart, you lose the opportunity to be, to have distribution with other more natural retail specific customers. So they've been awesome. For us, really, like, they doubled our distribution. We did a test with them in 2022, and then we expanded our distribution in November for the reset. So we transitioned from frozen pizza to frozen appetizers, which for us was much better because we're no longer competing against a full pie, which is a very different value proposition. You can get a full pie versus like, 6 pizza cupcakes, which is more as an appetizer.
So with Walmart, have you had to do Ibotta or Fetch or any of those, couponing programs that aren't necessarily part of the cost of the EDLP, but something that you kind of do as a part of supporting Walmart, or no?
We haven't. We really invest in Walmart Connect. And so that's like where we've invested most of our marketing dollars towards. We've looked into Ibotta. It's really expensive. I would say
Yeah.
a campaign for Ibotta minimum is 50,000. So we're looking into that. There's also different, there's our IRC, instant redeemable coupons that you can do that we're looking into. There's also different platforms that you can work on the coupon side. So we're exploring different options. I would say now that we have more distribution, we have to, invest in a little bit more marketing. But before, when that was really the only place that customers could find us nationwide, we were driving a lot of sales to the register.
Does anyone else think it's amazing that you've done this with like one and maybe 2 people? Like, it's amazing. Just
But we have a lot of fractional people who support us, but I would say full
Bill,
time
I just
on our
got to
team.
tell you, like, really, really freaking amazing. Okay, Jake, back to you. Culture and team. Going back to this sort of, I would like a Marcy to follow me around and just like make the deck that I promise I'm going to make or follow up on the promotion, whatever. You're also like my go-to guy when I'm dealing with team stuff, or you always have like how about this, like around this corner kind of way of approaching things. So I'm curious about how, to me, it's like sales is like tea party with ops, tea party with marketing, tea party with the founder, tea party with the brokers. Like it's sort of the hub of a lot of communication. And I feel like you're going to have some good insights into how to make that communication smooth. How do you keep your cross-functional communication smooth? Do you have any tips or things that you've learned along the way where you can delegate more effectively, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely can touch on that. I also feel like I need to watch more old Peanuts because I feel like you reference Peanuts all the time and I like
I
always
do.
get the reference, but
Yeah, sorry.
no.
It might just be like an old person thing, but like I think about Peanuts a lot.
Yeah, no, it's homework for me. So one thing that we really struggle with to the part of your question on like paperwork and coordination and all of that, when there are so many things going on across, several distributors, several retailers, partners, some of whom are direct, the alt channel stuff, it's easy to all of a sudden, get out of sorts and get disorganized. And it's absolutely happened to us too. And at our last team offsite, we spent considerable amount of time on a new system for a lot on sales paperwork and sales info, and I'll share it because it's been helpful for us. I don't know if it's helpful for others, but basically we have like one master document with every bit of info you could ever need to fill out a new item form, to fill out a new form for a distributor, to launch a new product or activate a new product with UNFI. There's one master document. It's password protected. There's only one person on the team on the operations side who can edit that document. And there's a single email thread that every time, if there's an update that's needed, it gets requested to that email thread, and the different groups, right? Sales and ops and finance and production all need to approve the change. And then the change happens and a new one's sent around and it's still under lock and key from the one person in operations. Because
Wow, that's great.
pretty quickly it was like, oh, I sent this price list to these guys and somebody else made a tweak to another one that wasn't on the drive, and we realized the dimension was wrong, but we forgot to add it into this new one, and oh, we didn't have the right, we added a new SKU, but it isn't on this price list that we had previously sent to our broker. It just became such a mess. And so obviously, like, accuracy is incredibly important. I would argue consistency is more important, right? If you're like barely off on something, right? I'm not saying make massive errors, but if things aren't perfectly accurate, but they are consistent, I think that matters a lot more. So I think this new system, we've now been using it for a couple of months. And obviously there aren't changes every week to some of these things, but as we catch something or add something or think of something, we go through this system. Everyone then has that latest and greatest master document, and it allows us to streamline things. And all of a sudden, once you have that, like a lot of the paperwork and some of these things where you're like, oh, should ops handle this or should sales
Right.
handle this? Like all of it becomes a lot less intimidating because it's really copying and pasting from this master doc that's organized well and has everything. Those forms are so intimidating if you're like, I don't know where to find any of this, and I need to go here for that and look in my email
Right.
for this. And so that's how we've approached it from an organizational structure standpoint. And so far, it's been good.
That's actually exactly the answer that I was hoping, because that is, I think a lot of teams get into the weeds and there's a lot of stuff. I mean, we're all too early to have a sales ops function. And yet it's those in between sales and marketing. What happens? Like, when's the promo? What did we offer? Which sale, which stores are we in? How many SKUs? What's the artwork? That falls in here. And then you have sales and ops where, again, it's like sales is kind of doing their thing. Ops is trying to, deal with the demand plan and making sure that we're loading up for the right things and making sure, there's like Pinto and Kroger IQ and every different retailer, you have to upload the same 17 things, and yet no one can ever find where those things are and where does it live and whose job and all of that. So I think that's amazing. Kevin, you're good at this stuff too. Communication channels, back and forths. Do you have some secrets to smoothing it out for your team?
Yeah, I think I can't take credit for any of this. I think our director of sales, he set up a couple meetings that I think have been super beneficial. So he has 3 monthly meetings and then 1 biweekly meeting. So the monthly meetings he sets up, one is with operations, where they'll review inventory stock levels as well as like what's expiring for retail inventory. And it kind of just gives a nice feedback loop where our director of sales then knows, okay, where do I need to push? Do I need to go to an online wholesale account, give them a special deal so we can offload some of this inventory? So he has that going. Then he has a monthly finance meeting. That's where they'll get together with our director of finance and they'll review the retail model. He'll provide new updates on probabilities of landing upcoming accounts, as well as any new upcoming placements for cut-ins, and then they'll adjust that accordingly. And then he has a monthly meeting with our marketing team, which is just to review any relevant D2C initiatives that actually could be interesting for him to know as he pitches buyers. And then he has his last biweekly meeting with shopper marketing, which is a new function that we're kind of developing internally. I didn't even know what that term meant. So shopper marketing is kind of like a growth team for retail, like to grow your velocity.
There's a new
But
term too. It's
oh,
called retail media.
retail media. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe that's what we should call it.
that's the new what the cool kids are saying.
Definitely. So he does that biweekly meeting with our shopper marketing team member, where the shopper marketing team member reviews all upcoming initiatives, gets feedback from the director of sales, as well as provides like results. And then it gives him fodder to then report to buyers like, hey, FYI, here's what we're doing to support you. And so I think those are the 4 live meetings he does, which are super, I mean, obviously great. And then he has some asynchronous things. So our shopper marketing and just generally our marketing team, we do what's called sprints. So which means 2 times per month, we do a planning process where we have a backlog of experiments. We like ideate experiments across shopper marketing and marketing. We'll like spec them out, we'll prioritize them, and then we'll start executing. And because all of that stuff, especially on the shopper marketing side, is documented with like projects, it's really easy for our director of sales at any point to just look at the shopper marketing dashboard and say like, oh, here are the 5 experiments we're running this month. What are the results? Hey, this is interesting. Let me get some more information. And oh, shopper marketing guy, can you give me a 1-pager output that I can send to our buyer? And this has actually caused us to land a bunch of like off-shelf displays, just because buyers are like, oh my God, you guys are really investing with us. And
Right.
we found that to be super successful. It's a lot of
Super,
documentation and those meetings. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's very, very helpful. I knew because I know that your tech kind of you have a testing brain, um, which can be hard in like a hard good, clunky, long supply chain world, but you do a really great job of mapping your tech testing brain onto the world of consumer goods. So that's always really interesting for me to hear. Um, Let's talk a little bit about strategy. You know, Michelle, you mentioned it a little bit. You sort of started with, you know, you did not follow the playbook, the natural to conventional to mass playbook. I think that's probably more norm now than I'm always surprised when I hear people following that playbook at this point, partly because Walmart has gotten sort of engaged with emerging brands. Target is, you know, very much sort of like, you know, they're all trying to figure out a little bit, are they leaning into their private label and like battening down the hatches, or do they need innovation and do they want to be fun and cool for new consumers? I don't know that any of them have figured it out yet. But I do know that, you know, that middle conventional Kroger Albertsons world has gotten actually harder for a lot of emerging brands than the mass and the club world. So that's been sort of an interesting thing to watch, just from my perspective. So breaking down your channels, now that you are in natural, you have a touch in conventional and you have mass. How are you thinking about it? I mean, do you map it out and say, these are the next 5 targets we want, not target the store, but like store targets? We really want to make sure that we're even across natural and mass. We need a little more conventional, maybe thinking about some other sort of distribution possibilities or, you know, other channels, even food service or things like that. So just your big picture when if you had to draw it out, like what would you say is the way that you think about where you sell your product, where you want to be selling your product?
It's a great question. We actually just did our 2024 strategic planning for retail and trying to understand like if we want to try to get new accounts or if we want to, you know, focus on the current distribution that we have. And we do it by, I would say, customer retailer and understanding who their shopper is. So I would say for Walmart, we're not looking to expand our distribution with Walmart. I think the distribution that we have is great and we want to focus on increasing our velocities on shelf, and they are a productive customer for us. So the distribution we have is great, but obviously you can't dictate if you're going to get more distribution or less distribution. We just want to, like, our goal is always to exceed whatever the benchmark is within that category, and make sure that we're exceeding that or at least on par, and also checking off all the boxes. So that's how we approach everything. And if we would go by retailer, I would say by channel, like you're talking about, again, it goes back to what you can afford. So some of more in the natural channel, like for example, we don't really have a huge independent presence with bunch of independent retailers. And the reason being is working with the distributors, it's really expensive, especially with the markup that they need to receive. And then our price point is just out of whack on shelf. We're like $14.99 for a 6-pack. So we know until we can focus on our costing and reduce our delivered price or even switch to delivered, because we're FOB right now with most of our customers, we can maintain a one national delivered price, then it doesn't make sense for us because we can't control the variability of our pricing from the East Coast to the Midwest to the South to the West Coast, right? Because we're producing in Brooklyn, so shipping from East to West is very expensive. So that's what we're really focused on, is understanding, okay, which customers can we actually afford to go to market with? Are we able to control the final SRP on shelf? And then also, what is that margin or the investment on trade that we'd have to invest with that customer, meaning retailer? So I would say with the current retailers that we've launched with, there's some that were like crushing it and would love to expand with those specific customers. And that's what we've also did, was we've strategically identified which customers and where we want to launch by geography. And I think that for us has been really helpful. We've always done that versus going too wide too quick, even though it feels like we have a ton of distribution already. It's kind of being really transparent with the buyer and being honest and saying, hey, like, thank you for this opportunity. This is amazing. We really want to take this on, but we don't have the funding to support this, number one. And number two, we want to test and learn. We know that we have a lot of customers in this specific market. Can we test here? Like we have more brand awareness here,
Yeah.
so can we try here and see how it works? And then also like, can you work with us on the slotting? Like what is the expectation from our partnership? What do you expect for us to invest? Like how much do you want us to invest? How many times a year do we have to promote? Are there TPR fees that we need to run? All those questions, like, and it's okay to be upfront and honest. And I think, too much distribution and getting distribution is great, but staying on shelf is so difficult. And how do you find that balance? And I think that's something that we're definitely navigating now, because you want to grow, right? You want to show year-over-year growth, but then you also don't want to take on too much that you can't really handle it. And then your velocities decline across all retailers, because then you're not able to invest and support like what you need to. So that's how we're looking at it. I think there's some retailers where we see the data, we see we're doing really well, and we think we can expand. And then there's some where we're like, let's stay where we're at. And then there's others where we feel like customers are telling us, specifically in the Southeast, where there's some retailers like a Publix, I think we do really great at, and we'd love to be in Publix, and they don't charge slotting.
I love Publix.
Yeah, Publix is
great. Publix yesterday because I was in North Carolina.
Yeah,
if any
Publix would be a
Publix
great
people
retailer.
are listening, we love you.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, they're amazing. So we'd love to partner with Publix. Like I feel like that's an account that we want to reach out to and to participate in the line review.
But I think this is all, I mean, this is like a very interesting way to do it. For emerging brands, you start to think like anyone who wants us, that's great. Like we're sort of not in a power position a lot of times. So, but what ends up happening, I mean, just giving Kroger as an example, they want to try to play with more emerging brands. It's very hard for them because they don't really have room in their warehouses for little brands. That's not what they're built for. So they end up on the West Coast, for example, using DPI. If you're shipping to the West Coast and then you're in DPI and then you're in Ralph's, you're going to be, I mean, a $6.99 product ends up at $10, $10.99, like easy. And that doesn't necessarily bode very well for how you're going to do in that store, which then doesn't bode very well for the test of how you'll do in Kroger proper. So it's almost like, I always use this example of like a big steamship with like a little kayak or a cigarette boat. It's very hard to connect. It's very hard for them to play with us, even if they want to. And I think it's also interesting, and I hope everyone's just noticing, like Michelle has a frozen, Kevin has a lightweight shelf stable. Those are going to be very different in the way that they end up going to market and what makes sense. And it really is, it's like what your product is, how much can you afford to spend? Part of it is certainly like, where is the consumer for this? You've all mentioned placement. You've all mentioned promotion. Like these are the things that are, they're basic, but they're also different for every brand. And they're also really, really important for you to think of as you're mapping out your strategy going forward. And everyone has to have a strategy going forward, because if you just take what's given to you, like, trust me, I've done that. It doesn't work. Okay. Kevin, data, you're a tech guy. I think of you as like someone who would get data. I don't know how you get data. I don't know what resources you use for data. I don't know how. I would imagine you're using your Facebook group as like a good source of, pretty good information. How do you use it? How do you use it internally? How do you use it when you're positioning yourself with retailers? Do you put it into decks? What works, what doesn't? Data.
Yeah, I'm actually not as much of a data guy. I think my co-founder really is the data guy, but so in terms of data sources, our Facebook community definitely is great. Like one time when we were pitching the Fresh Market, I always tell this story because it's so fun. We made a post in the community where we took a photo of like the Fresh Market, like the front of the store. And we said, hey, has anyone here heard of the Fresh Market? We're going to pitch the buyer in a few weeks. And we got like, 100 comments, like overnight, and we took a screenshot of that post and we sent it to the buyer, and the buyer was like, oh my god, I love that. Like it's like really reaffirming for them to know that there's built-in demand already. So say if any of you have an opportunity to build a community, that's how we think of the community, is like they're also almost like a special projects where you can do little things like that to build trust with your buyer. The other thing we do really well, not really well, is we built a consistent like user feedback engine. I think Jake actually talked about this on like asking his customers like where they heard about us. So post-purchase surveys is huge, like on our website, but even in our post-purchase email flow, we have another type form. And then also in our Facebook community, when you join, you have to answer 3 questions. So we have these like 3 data sources that are collecting like hundreds of pieces of feedback every single day. And it used to be so painful for our team to dig through like 10,000 responses. It actually was not physically possible.
Right.
And what we discovered was you can use ChatGPT. Sorry to
Yeah.
go into tech, everyone. You can literally upload a file of the .csv of like 50,000 data points and ask ChatGPT, like, what are the core themes that you are seeing from all these customer responses? And it will give you an output in less than 5 minutes of like, here are all of like the like retailers that your customers are talking about, or like here are all the influencers your customers heard about you from. And you can just derive so many interesting insights from that you can share with buyers. And I would say the last thing, like probably the more boring stuff, is just like obviously some retailers like Whole Foods or Wegmans will give you week-on-week data. Definitely try to build your own dashboards, just a pivot table, like look at the void reports, look at store by store level, where you are out of stock. It's like a way for you to handle merchandising without actually having territory sales managers. You can just have your brokers go in. Now we are very lucky in that I think we are able to finally afford spins, which is like a horrible thing. Actually, I probably didn't say that, but it's really expensive. But if you can get it, our finance guy is able to build Tableau dashboards with the spins data that allows our director of sales to just like pivot, look for these interesting sales stories. And what he will also do is create Loom videos, basically recordings of like how he is pivoting the data. And it helps educate the rest of the team so that we know how best to support him, because then we can go into Tableau and be like, oh, we noticed this thing. Okay, marketing team, how do we support him there? So he always has this term, which is like one team, one dream, or like we are all salespeople. And he's constantly trying to educate us so that we can support him from the data side of things. So. Yeah.
No, it's great. And by the way, I'm not a tech person and I use ChatGPT for stuff too. So, but it is a little techy, but it's great. Okay. I know we only have 1 minute and I don't want to go too much over time. Expo West coming up. Michelle, you said it was really great for you in the past. Are you going this year?
Yes, we will be there.
Amazing. Kevin, what about you? Thoughts on Expo?
We will be exhibiting for the first time. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
Okay. And Jake?
We'll be exhibiting as well, and similar to Michelle, I've definitely had some good opportunities come from the show previously.
Amazing. Okay. I don't want to go over. I appreciate all of you. I learned a lot. Super, super helpful. Thank you all. You like opened your coffers and let it all hang out. I don't know if that's an expression, but I appreciate it. And I guess Jake and I are going to plan another retailer roundtable part sank.
Yeah. The one thing I would add is we've done alt channel retailers, we've done traditional retailers and natural and e-com, etc. If there are any ideas anyone has, the types of folks you would like to hear from in a session like this, please let us know. We're very open to feedback, and most importantly, want it to be useful to the Naturally New York and broader Naturally Network community. So yeah, let us know.